Ramona.
Yeah,
Ramona.
From Yuma.
Yuma.
He's like, I don't know anymore.
Future Yuma.
I'm a nomad.
There we go.
Oh, hello everybody. I'm an alcoholic. My name's Daniel Repples.
Hey,
Let's see. My sobriety date is February 2nd, 2009. That puts me at 17 years and a couple pennies. Let's see. Where do I start? So I came very ill prepared. I don't really prepare for these things. I just got asked to speak, and so I said, yeah, sure, why not? Haven't done that in a while. So the book says that we share in a general way what it used to be like, what happened, and what it's like now. So I think that that's the pattern and the formula that I'll use. I grew up in a fairly interesting family. We had upper middle class money, and we had like the show Roseanne, like mentality. You know, like it was crazy in my house. It was insane. Like we should not have had the level of quote unquote status that we got, but my mom just was really good at what she did for her business. My dad, it's weird. I've actually been doing a little bit of research about my dad. He died back in 2017, and I didn't really know a lot about him. I've just been doing some like public record searches and just finding out some stuff, and it's really interesting. And one thing that I do have known for a long time is that drug addiction and mental illness is kind of a big part of my family. My dad had a lot of mental health issues. He had some addiction issues, and my mom was addicted to pills for most of my childhood, which I didn't realize until I started to get older. I remember she took Valium all the time, and she would say that it was because she had seizures. And she was doing it for her seizures, and she would take little slivers. She'd be like, oh, I feel waves, which was her sign that she's going to have a seizure, and she'd take like a little sliver. And I just thought, okay, so she's taking a seizure medication. And then one day someone pointed out to me when I was like 15 years old, they said, Valium's not a seizure medication. She's taking it because if she doesn't, she will have a seizure. Oh, okay, I didn't understand what that meant. And then it was later in life that I realized, oh, my mom was addicted to Valium. At some point in my childhood, she did get pulled over for a DUI for the Valium, and she also got a smuggling charge slapped on her because she used to buy them from Mexico. I remember my mom, my dad, and I, we used to go to Mexico every single Saturday. We'd go down to TJ. My dad and I would wait in a Carl's Jr. down in TJ while my mom went and bought Valium and cigarettes because they were cheap. And then we would hang out and buy little tchotchkes, and then we'd walk back across the border. And that was like a normal Saturday thing. I was used to that. I knew that's what we did. And I never thought anything of it. Like I knew that like my brother smoked weed in the house, and that wasn't really a thing that I thought was weird. And that was just my life. And I remember when I was probably about 13, 14 years old, I went to visit family in Michigan. I have a bunch of cousins and uncles and stuff out there. And my cousin, he's about 2 years older than me, and he was already starting to smoke weed, and he introduced me to weed for the first time. And I don't know, it was Michigan weed, so it wasn't great. But I didn't know the difference. I just knew that like him and his little friends were kind of accepting me. And that was like the first time that had really happened. Most of my childhood, I was kind of a, like, I don't want to say an outcast, but I was a weird kid. I was a really strange kid. And I still am a strange kid. But I don't think but I don't believe that has anything to do with my alcoholism whatsoever. I'm not an alcoholic because I was a strange kid. I'm not an alcoholic because, somebody was a little bit mean to me in second grade. That's not how alcoholism works. I know a lot of people who had wonderful childhoods, wonderful upbringings, and just the most privileged life you could even just think of, and they're alcoholics too. Alcoholism doesn't differentiate people. It's just it's almost like a lottery. It just picks it at random, and unfortunately I won that lottery. Maybe fortunately, who knows. So I smoked weed for the first time, and then I realized like I was accepted by all these friends, and I made a mental note of that. It wasn't something I was like going to pursue. It wasn't something that was like, it wasn't that big of a deal to me. It was just something that I knew. I just kept a mental note of that. Once I came back to San Diego, a lot of weird stuff happened. My mom, because of her drug addiction, was very paranoid about everything. She was on top of the the drug addiction, she was also a hardcore, like, fanatical evangelical Christian. And at any day, the world was going to end. The rapture was going to happen. We were all going to go up in a blaze of glory. And she was preparing for that. And in preparation of that, she prepared for nothing else. She didn't save for retirement. She didn't really care about paying the mortgage that much. She just thought that any day, the world was going to end. And in part of these weird delusions that she had about these things, she was convinced that because of her belief, like, the devil was making the government go after her. So it's really weird. So we moved to Mexico for 3 months. I moved to Mexico for 3 months. Unbeknownst to me, I thought we were going on vacation because I was a naive little kid. But no, we moved down to Mexico. And I found out later, like, this was the plan to live there forever. And God decided that plan wasn't really going to happen. And we ended up coming back. And from there, my mom started to kind of go downhill a little bit more. Just mentally. But I never really noticed it. To me, I always just thought my mom was just this quirky lady. She was just kind of weird. She was a little oddball, and she was my mom, and I loved her, and she was just kind of strange, and I didn't realize the signs that, like, her mental health was declining. Because it could just be because of drugs. It could be because of, that's just the predisposition that she had. And I don't know at what point I decided to start smoking weed more regularly. I think I just found somebody who I could, and then I did, and I don't even know how that ended up happening. But when that started, that mental note of I'm a part of something now became a lot more prevalent. As soon as I started smoking weed more often, and again, I know this is an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, I'll get to the alcohol, it's just, that's where it started, so I gotta tell it. As soon as that became more prevalent, I started to get more friends. I started to get people that were also smoking weed too. And I would meet up with them, and we would do that, and we would laugh, and be really goofy, and everything was great. And that mental note that I had made a few years back was solidified. I was able to feel what the book calls that ease and comfort that comes from just one. And there weren't a lot of problems. Everything was great. And then I remember, I don't remember the first time I drank. I don't remember. There's like 2 different things that happened, and I don't remember which one was the first. I remember they were fun and terrifying and terrible at the same time, all 3 things. Each time, these 2 times that I don't remember which one was first, my friend and I, we got drunk off of some bottle that we found in their parents' house, and we ended up blacked out somewhere crazy, and fucking the parents had to get called, and someone got picked up, and they were puking on the ground, and best day of my life, right? And from there, I started to drink more and more and more and more. Because the book talks about the ease and comfort, and it talks about how, as alcoholics, once I take 1 drink, I cannot control what happens after that. I cannot control whether I'm going to have 1 drink, 2 drinks, 6 drinks, 8 drinks. It doesn't matter. I just keep drinking until it's gone, and then I try to find more. And then once I stop drinking, I can't stay away from that first drink. And that part didn't happen at first, the second part. But I did notice that when I would drink, I would not stop until it was gone. I had no idea or concept of hey, blacking out's not normal. But I knew that blacking out was fun sometimes, waking up in somewhere else, or waking up somewhere that I don't remember how I got there. Usually I'd wake up at home and I wouldn't remember oh shit, I was drunk at 3 p.m. yesterday and it's 7 a.m. now. I don't know what happened in between that time. And something about that, it was almost invigorating, but it kept getting worse. And my friends, they'd all drink too. We all kind of drank together, and bad things would happen and good things would happen. And sometimes they'd stop and sometimes they'd be okay. But I would continue to drink no matter what. And people would tell me, again, we're 15 years old, and people would tell me, bro, you have a problem with alcohol. And, which is weird coming from 15-year-olds, because I feel like a lot of 15-year-olds, they drink, and when they drink, they get drunk, because that's just the cool thing to do. When you're 15 years old, you drink with your friends, and you get drunk, and it's fun. But I was the only person in my little group that was being told by my friends, you have a problem. When you get drunk, bad shit happens, and then you just do it again tomorrow. And I remember making promises to people, okay, it's just what it talks about in chapter 3, all the little deals that I make. I'm not going to drink hard alcohol. I'm just going to drink. And I didn't like beer, so like I was like, I'll just drink 4 Locos.
Oh, God.
Yeah. The word loco is in there for a reason.
Yes.
100%. I won't drink hard alcohol. I'll just drink, Sparks or, whatever the drink was at the time, the rage, and I don't know if you guys remember Juice, Joose, J-O Juice. Those are my favorite. I love those. And I started to see the tolerance pattern, because I remember like they sold those in big old cans, and I would drink one of them. It started where I would drink like one of them and I'd be like good. And then towards the end, I was drinking I had like a system. If I drink 2.5, I won't black out. But if I drink 3, it's bad. But how do you just waste half of a drink? Like, I'm not going to do that, right? So then I would come up with a system where, okay, I'll drink 2.5. I'll wait till some of it wears off, then I'll drink the other half to bring me back up. And that's like the weird system that I had created for myself to kind of rationalize my own behavior. And somewhere in that period of time, I don't even remember if I was drinking or what was going on, but I remember I lived right next to an elementary school where I lived, and I used to go over there all the time and just torment people that worked there. I don't know why. It wasn't during school hours. I would go there and torment like maintenance people and janitors and just like be an asshole to all these staff. And one day I went over there and I had a guitar for some reason. I didn't know how to play it, but I had one. And I was just hanging out with these kids that were there and just playing like funny songs, trying to get people to laugh. And this janitor comes out and she's like yelling at me and telling me I gotta leave because of my foul language. And she was a Mexican lady. And I remember like jokingly, and I'm not proud of this, but this is just what I said. I was 14 years old. I said, she said, I'll call the cops on you. And I said, well, I'll call and have you deported. And she decided she was going to take a picture of me. So when she went to take a picture of me, I lifted my guitar up to block my face, and she said that I threatened to hit her with the guitar. And so she called the police, and charges were filed against me, and I had terrorist threats. Terrorist threats was the charge that was made against me for that incident. And so with that, I was arrested. I was put in juvenile hall for not even juvenile hall. I think I was just taken into the station and booked, and then they released me. And I was, or maybe I went in overnight. I don't know. It was a long time ago. But I was charged with terrorist threats, and I was put on probation for a year, is what it was supposed to be. And from that point to the time the year was up, I was a menace to society. Every single day, my life consisted of waking up, going to school, waking up hungover, going to school, getting through whatever that nonsense was, getting out of school, going to a friend's house, and getting my skateboard, going over to the local Circle K and standing outside and panhandling for money so I can get more alcohol. And there was this homeless guy that I used to drink with. He was 24 years old, homeless. He had already lost a section of his colon because of his alcoholism. They had to remove a section of his colon because of all the vodka he drank. And this guy would drink about a fifth. He would drink a few fifths of vodka a day. This guy was a pretty heavy drinker. And I remember my friends would tell me that I'm an alcoholic. And I'd be like, I'm not an alcoholic. Devin's an alcoholic. Like, he drinks out of a paper bag behind a church. And that's what alcoholics do. I make sure I take it out of the bag when I drink it, so I'm not an alcoholic, And that's who I drank with. That was the company I kept. While all my friends were doing their thing and hanging out and having fun and doing shit, I was behind a church, an Orthodox church in Santee, drinking vodka with a homeless guy. And that became like my friend. Like, he was my buddy. Every day I would go look for him. He knew me, I knew him. And we would have like panhandling competitions. I would go to the Circle K, he'd go to the Mr. Liquor, and then we would meet up every 10 minutes and see who had more. Who had more money. And then we would put our money together, and he would go in and he'd get drinks, and then we would get drunk. And that was my day every day. And then I'd come home. I had a 6 o'clock curfew, so naturally I was home every night by 9. And I'd come home drunk and usually blacked out and wake up and do it all over again. And that was my day, pretty much every single day. And eventually, one time, and again, I don't want to make this war story. See, I'm doing okay. 30 minutes left. I I remember I was drinking one time. I had gone through this period where a lot of bad shit had happened, and I decided, like, I need to cut down on my drinking. I need to, like, drinking beer only, limiting the number of drinks, never drinking alone, yada, 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 all that stuff. And I was drinking with this homeless guy, Devin, and I was just drinking, like, I don't even remember what it was. Like I said, it probably wasn't beer, because beer tasted like ass and didn't do the trick, like, quick enough for me, But I remember I went over to this random person's house, and he had some E&J. Yeah. And we called it Irk and Jerk. And he pulled it out, and they were taking shots. And I was like, all right, let me have a shot. And he's like, okay. And I said, okay, Devin, don't let me have more than 6 shots. And he goes, okay. Took a second shot. Took a third, took a fourth, took a fifth. Took a sixth. I said, okay, dude, check it out. How about 8? And he said, no, dude, like, you said 6. You need to do 7. Okay, well, how about 8? He goes, fine, okay. 8 shots. 7, 8. All right, dude, how about this? Check it out. How about 10 shots? That's it. That's the limit. He looks at me and says, I'm not your fucking dad. Do whatever you want to do. So then I don't even remember how many shots I had after that. But what I do know is I woke up the next morning, blacked out, or I didn't black out. I came to the next morning from a blackout. My mom banging on my door, and I wake up and I look at her and I say, what? Like, what? And she says, do you understand how mad I am at you right now? I said, no, I don't. What are you talking about? And she said, do you remember what happened last night? I said, no. She said, the cops brought you home. I said, oh, okay, I don't, what happened? And from what she was told by the police officers, I got kicked out of this person's house, and it was in an apartment complex, and I was out in front. They had these big rocks, and I was just sitting by these rocks singing at the top of my lungs. Some song. This is 2 a.m. The cops rolled up. They're like, yo, like, what's going on? What's happening? What are you doing? And I probably said some shit like, go fuck yourself, pig, or something that I would say to cops at that time. And so they came up to me to detain me or what have you, and I fell over, and I took him with me. I accidentally grabbed his shirt, took him to the ground with me. And he had every probable cause to take me in that night, but he just took me home for some reason. And so obviously it was reported to my probation officer, and she, was going to take action on that. And I remember she said, you have to go to counseling, and you have to do A, B, C, D, yada, 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 keep your nose clean, all that good stuff. And I said, yeah, dude, that sounds good, perfect. And in January 2009, I remember we were going through a lot of financial issues. We had a pretty nice house in Santee, and my mom just couldn't afford the mortgage anymore, and we had to move. She's like, we got to short sale the house. We got to get out of here. We're going to lose everything. We're going to move to Ramona. So I was like, okay, so I'm going to drive a truck with a shotgun and chew tobacco, and that's just going to be my life now? And she said, yeah, I guess that's what's going to happen. And it was the middle of January, and I remember I was laying in bed, and I was really pissed off at God, and I was drunk, and I said to God, I said, look, this isn't fair. My mom has followed you most of her life. She's done everything she can to serve you, and this is what you're doing to her and our family. And you need to make this right. You need to fix this. This isn't cool. And I'm yelling at God, not yelling, but I'm talking out loud to God and saying, like, you need to fix this. This isn't right what's happening. And a couple weeks later, we're going to have a going away party for me because I'm leaving to Ramona, and I'm going to be so far away from everybody. When you're 15, you don't have a car, like Ramona is far. Ramona's really far. So, this is going to be goodbye in my mind, So we're going to throw this one big party, and everyone was supposed to come, and only like 4 people showed up. And we got drunk at my house, and I did a lot of shit that I'm not proud of, or said a lot of shit I'm not proud of, and got in a fight with my brother. My brother's 20 years older than me. He's my half brother. He's 6'6" and about 300 and something pounds, and I was gonna take him. That's what I thought, anyways. It was like the 4th time I tried to fight him in the last year. I was like, I'm gonna fucking beat you up, and I couldn't beat him up. And so he was also drunk because he's an alcoholic as well. He just doesn't know it yet. So we got in this little fight, and my mom or somebody had called the cops, and my brother was holding me down, yelling at me, And the cops come in, the police officer comes in, and we both look up at the cop and say, "You're not supposed to be in here without a warrant," or whatever. And then I get arrested again, right? They cart me off, and I was arrested, and the charges were, again, I was arrested in my home, disturbing the peace, which is in my home, vandalism in my own property, and drunk in public in my own home. So I was in juvenile hall. That's where I was. That's where my last, that's where I was drunk the last time, was in Kearney Mesa Juvenile Hall off of Meadowlark. And that's the last place. And so I woke up the next morning, and again, I wasn't blacked out, so I knew where I was. I just thought it was a dream. And I spent the first day in there, and the second day I went into court. And the judge looks at me, and she sees all my charges and everything that had gone on in the last such and such amount of time. And she looks at me and she says, "Daniel, do you think that you're an alcoholic?" And it took me a second, because I thought this was a trap. I was like, okay. And I was thinking back on all the TV I'd seen in my life, and I heard of this thing called a plea deal. I was like, okay, she's having me do a plea deal right now. This is a plea bargain, right? If I admit I'm guilty of alcoholism, they'll just lower everything and just let me go. Is what I thought. So I said, yeah, no, I think I'm an alcoholic. And she said, good, that's the first step in recovery. You have 21 days to think about the other 11 steps. And she put me in a 21-day, juvenile program. And that's where I spent, 21 days. Well, 22, I got in trouble one day. And when I got out, in that whole period of time, my mom, my brother, and my dad had packed up our entire house and moved to Ramona. So I got out, and I was in Ramona, California, in a little apartment right down the street there. And I think I wanted to change. I don't remember, but I think that all of that had happened, and I was like, things need to change. Something needs to be different. I was in a new town with new people, and it was a new start. And I think I knew that subconsciously, but I don't think I told myself I'm going to quit drinking. I think I just said I'm going to lay low for a little bit, because that was a big experience. And I was let out on a Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday, March 3rd or something. And I went to my first meeting on March 9th, 2009. It was at Hunter Street before this club was here. It was the Sweet Surrender speaker meeting, Sunday night, 5:30. And I showed up to the meeting, and this little old lady named Vivian came up to me and offered me coffee, and I started a new addiction of coffee. And this other guy came up to me. His name was David, and he was, in my mind, he was old. Like, I think I'm probably like 10 years away from as old as he was when I got here. But when I saw him, I was like, that guy's old. But he just talked to me, He said, he told me parts of his story about when he was in high school. He would hide a bottle in his locker, and he used to like bribe the security, and all these stories. I was like, oh, I'd do that. I could see that. That's a really good idea. But he knew I was telling him stories about what I was going through and had been through. And he said, oh yeah, I've done that. And I started to hear these stories from these people, and the people in the speaker meeting, that they did what I did. And then they did more. They just kept going. And I didn't want that. Because, that little experience with juvenile hall, I'll do a little backtrack. I remember I was in there were all these kids in there that were talking about how their brother was locked up in Donovan, and they couldn't wait to be 18 so that they could commit a crime and go hang out with their brother in Donovan. And I was like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be institutionalized that I can't wait to visit a prison, That's not what I want. And if I keep going down this path, that's where I'm going to be. And I did not want that. So I just kept coming to meetings. I was told I had to go to 2 meetings a week, and I had to get my little slip signed. Why, baby? Are you looking at me? Sorry. She's looking right at me. So I had to get my slip signed. So I was on a court slip as well, a nudge from the judge. And so I came to 2 meetings a week. And I was put in an outpatient program here in Ramona, and they had me go to 2 meetings a month. So that was really easy to do with 2 meetings a week. And I went to meetings all the time. I just loved what I got here. There were people that had been through what I'd been through, and then some. They understood what I was going through. They didn't judge me. They told me to keep coming back. They listened to what I had to say, and they actually like respected me, which was weird. They were like, they respected what I had been through, and they told me that I could do this. And I just kept going to meetings. I would go to 1 to 3 meetings a day, depending on the day. And I would just go. Anytime there was a meeting, someone's like, hey, we're going down the hill for me. You want to go? Yeah, I'll go. There was a period during the summer, I was going to 5 meetings every Friday. I think it was 4. I don't know. It was a lot of meetings every Friday. I had a sponsor. I'd wake up. He'd take me to the noon meeting in Claremont. Then we'd hit the 3:30 in Poway. We'd come back here, hit the 5 o'clock, and then I'd split up with him and go hit the 8 o'clock meeting and right down the street at 8th and D. And that was my Friday every week for the whole summer. And I just loved going to meetings, but I wasn't getting what I was supposed to be getting in the program, which is from working the 12 steps. You know, I was still a sick alcoholic who was just learning a lot of cool shit. If I was gonna go become like a mechanic, right? And I got a bunch of books about cars and I just read them. I could tell you exactly how to take apart a transmission. I could tell you all that stuff. But until I pull the transmission out and take it apart, I don't know shit, And that's what I started to learn as things started to happen in my life. I was finding myself unable to handle certain situations in a sane way because I didn't have any tools. I just had what you guys had told me, and I didn't know how to apply them correctly. And so I remember in around October-ish of 2009, probably September, October, my mom was like, hey, we can't afford to live here anymore. I'm not working. I don't know how I'm going to get more money. I got to move with your brother up to LA, and we got to stay with his dad for a little bit. My dad was in the hospital for something. It's a long story on that anyways, but he was gone. So I was like, okay, well, I don't really want to go to LA. I don't think I'm going to stay sober if I go to LA. I don't know if I'm going to want to go to meetings, and I don't know if I'm going to backtrack what's going to happen. And there was a guy who was here, him and his wife. I don't know if you guys, a lot of you probably know Rindy and Maureen. I know a couple people in here know them. They didn't know me very well. Again, I came in here, I got sober in February, was here in March. So from March to September, that's 6 months. I was 6 months sober. And they said, hey, if you don't want to move to LA, you can come move in with us. And you can live in our house if you want to. You just have to stay sober and go to school. And that's a really big leap of faith to take on some random kid who's technically there on a probation violation for a felony. And so I said, that would be great. I would love to do that. So my mom and I, we hopped in the car and went down to probation to talk to my probation officer. And we said, all right, this is the deal. I can either move in with these people, stay in San Diego County, or I can move to LA with my mom and my brother. And then we'll figure out, getting down to probation for my testing and all that. And she said, well, no, you can't do either of those things. You have to stay in San Diego County with a legal parent or guardian. You cannot do either of those two things. And so we told her the entire situation, and she said, okay, let's go for the judge and see what the judge wants to say. So I said, okay, cool, we'll do that. We go in front of the judge, and she looks through all the stuff. She looks through all the meetings I'd gone through. She looks at all the letters from my treatment program and all that. And she says, you're off probation. That's it. You're done. I was supposed to do a full year. And that was it. And my mom and my brother packed up and moved, and I stayed here in Ramona, and I stayed with these people for a while. And from there, I realized, if I'm going to do this program, I'm going to do this program right. I had done step work with a step group and got a lot of work done, but there were still things that I had just scratched the surface, and I needed to I'm on my own at this point. And so I started to do what you guys told me, which was the 12 steps. I'm going to do the work. What I was told is, we read chapter 5 at every meeting, and it says, here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. It doesn't say, here are the meetings we attended. It has a list of all the badass meetings. It doesn't say, here are the people we hung out with that have everyone's name listed, that are all the winners that we're supposed to stick with, that are supposed to help me and stay sober. It says, here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. To recover from alcoholism is the goal of this entire thing. And if I was going to, have a life that was happy, joyous, and free, those are the steps that I needed to take. So I spent the next couple of years doing the steps on a regular basis. And I made a lot of mistakes. I had a lot of phases of recovery. I've had many like AA Nazi phases in different intensities, I've had phases where I just didn't want anything to do with you people, but I still came anyways. I've had phases where I was so mad at God, I don't want to do the steps because why would I want to get closer to God? So I just didn't. And I just stayed sick or got sicker. I went through a phase in recovery where I let another addiction that's not related to this program at all sort of take over, and hurt a lot of people, and just did a lot of really, really not cool things for a while, for a few years. And it got really dark because I wasn't doing what I knew I was supposed to be doing. And so, recovery isn't always just like puppies and rainbows and happiness and all that. Life still happens on life's terms, and life sucks sometimes. People die, people hurt you, you get in car accidents, you get sick. That's what life is. But what Alcoholics Anonymous has taught me how to do by working the 12 steps is running these scenarios through a system, through a program that can help me deal with them in a way where I'm unshakable in my faith. And I can get through them and be reasonably serene. Not always happy, but serene. And, a lot of things have happened. I don't know. I don't think I'm going to hit 45 minutes. I don't know. We're going to see. What am I at right now? I've got...
You have 15 left.
15 left. Okay.
You're crushing it, though.
All right, perfect. We'll see how we do. Okay, so basically, I'm going through my life and I'm hurting people and everything's kind of a mess. And I meet a person. And we just hit it off, right? And we're both in this really dark time in our lives where a lot of things had happened, and we just sort of connected and gravitated towards each other and decided, hey, what would be great than two fucking really broken people being in a relationship together? That sounds really fun, And that's what we did, and we decided.
Are you talking about me?
Absolutely. So that's what we did, and we and it was it was a very interesting couple of years to start for both of us. We had to learn a lot about each other, about ourselves, and I had to use the program a lot to look at my own behavior and to change and to be a different person because I actually wanted to have a life that I dreamed of, because I've come in here and they say, was it find the person you want what they have and whatever. And, I'd see people that had, driving up in a Mercedes and all this. And I'm like, that's cool. But what I would see is I'd see people that came in homeless and they have, they have a car, they got a house, not like a mansion, but a house, and they got a wife and they got kids and they got a dog and a white picket fence and they got the American dream, right? And that's really all I've ever wanted, right? It was just that normal, sane and sound ideal for a life. And it was time for me to start doing that. Mm-hmm. And so, in this relationship, I just had to work a lot on myself and do the steps multiple times in a very short period of time to continue to continue to grow. And so, time goes by, things happen, and I sort of slip away from meetings, and then I come back, and then I slip away, and I come back, and I become an AA Nazi, and then I become super aloof about the program, and I get married. We got married. Congratulations to us. Thank you. And then we're pregnant. Congratulations to us. And then we're going to have a baby, and that's great. It's fantastic. We're super happy. Baby's supposed to come in November, and we're super stoked about it. We get married the end of August 28th of last year, and we're super stoked about starting our life together and enjoying being married, and then we're going to have this baby, and that was on a Thursday. We got married. We had our little honeymoon in San Diego, and everything was great. Monday, I go back to work. Life's good. Tuesday comes. She has to go to the hospital. Her blood pressure's super high. They admit her. Thursday, they tell us, you're probably going to have to stay in the hospital till you give birth, whether that means tomorrow or November. And then Friday, they say, we need to pull this baby out or both of you are going to die probably. So they pull her out, and she's early. 2 pounds, 2 ounces.
Oh,
wow. And now we have a baby, right? And we have a baby in the NICU. We have a baby that's this big. And so we spent the next 100 days going to the NICU every single day. And we found out a week after she was in there that she had this heart condition that can only be remedied through a surgery. So now we have a baby who's premature, underweight, who has a heart condition that needs to be operated on in a surgery. And all this is happening, right? And I remember I have them written down. I don't know, my phone's over there, it doesn't matter. When we did, at the wedding, we did the vow thing. You know, the whole vow thing they make you do? And in my vows, I said, like, at the end, and I feel like this was just God telling me, like, just pointing and laughing in a way. I said, I vow to always remind you to trust God, even when, like, that sucks, or something like that. And now I had to put that into practice. Because Dr. Bob always talked about, the only prescription for sobriety is trust God, clean house, help others. It's the only three things. And so I had to put the trust God thing to good use for that time. I wasn't really focused on cleaning house or helping others. I just didn't have the time. I didn't have the capacity. I just couldn't do it, but I could trust God. And that's all I did for the 100 days. Every single day we'd go in there and hear something new, have to deal with a different battle, have to deal with some fucking nurse or doctor being an asshole. And I just had to trust God through the whole process. And I had to remind her, and she had to remind me that, no matter what happens at the end of this, like, I have to trust God, no matter what. And that, to me, is a total. It's saying exactly what the program does. It says somewhere in the book that we'll be able to match calamity with serenity. And there were moments where we would just drive home from the hospital, and because I was still working full time, so I was exhausted. She was exhausted, and we would just be driving home from the hospital in complete silence because we didn't know what to say. We didn't know what was going to happen, and we would go on these long drives. Sometimes we would leave the hospital, instead of going home, we would do a big loop around San Diego, through Escondido, through Ramona, all the way back to El Cajon where we lived. And we would just listen to music, and we would have those moments of serenity within that calamity. And that was the program. And so now baby's home, and she's really pretty. And she screams in my face, and she's perfect, right? And now we have a new chapter. We have a new way, a new part of life where now we have to match calamity with serenity in different ways. And that's just what you do in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's a testament to how this program works, because whenever something happens, I can run it through that little formula right there. And I'll just kind of go through real quick. Powerless over alcohol, exactly what I said. When I take a drink, I don't know what's going to happen. When I stop drinking, I can't stop drinking no matter what. And that makes my life unmanageable because it destroys relationships and it destroys everything that makes me a spiritual being. And then came to believe that the power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. I always kind of had a power there. It's sort of evolved and changed over the years. It's never sort of been the same. It just kind of depends on where I am. But my relationship with God is very personal to this. I talk to him like he's a friend. I cuss at God. I say all kinds of shit that I would say to just you, as a human being. And that's just the came to believe that I have for right now. And will it change one day? Who knows? Maybe you'll see me in 5-7 years and I'll be a Buddhist monk. Who knows? But for right now, like, that's the God that works for me. And then made a decision to turn my will and my life over to God. That is a step I see overcomplicated more than any other step. I've seen people spend months on that step. Like, I just can't turn my will over. I'm having the hardest time. And nowhere does it say, the step doesn't say, turned our will and our lives over. It said made a decision to. And I had to learn that very early in recovery. When my sponsor told me, they said, if you're going to go to the grocery store, if you say, hey, I got to go to the store and pick up A, B, and C is not going to just show up on my counter. I've just made the decision to go do it. And now I got to get in my car, I got to drive to the store, I got to go in the aisle, I got to pick up the shit, I got to put it on the counter, I got to pay for it, I got to drive it home. Those are all the steps in that decision. So in the decision of turning my will and my life, I have to do this to actually get there. And the third step is really easy. It's like when you look at it in the book, it's like a couple paragraphs, and it's a prayer. And the prayer just says, I offer myself. It doesn't say, like, take everything. That's step 7. It says, I offer myself. And I can offer you anything. I can pull a $100 bill out of my wallet and offer it to anyone in this room. And as long as I pull my hand back just in time, I have not given you $100. I've offered it to you. And that's all I'm doing in third step is saying, here, God, just I'm offering this to you. What do you want to do with it? And what I was told is God says, well, I don't know what you're offering me yet. He's a business guy, right? It's just like a normal inventory. He said, okay, if I'm going to buy your business, what am I buying? Go get your assets and your liabilities taken care of in step 4 and come back and talk to me again. So I do a list and I do an inventory and I learn things about myself. I learn patterns. I learned that people piss me off, things piss me off, and these are the reasons they piss me off, and it affects me in this way. And that's really what's important. When I'm affected in this way, this is how I handle it. This is how I behave. This is the pattern that I do every single time, no matter what, like a computer. And I need to break some of those patterns down. And so when I have that inventory, I go back in step 5 and I go and I speak to another person about it and I tell God and I say, look, God, this is the business I'm offering you now. Assets, liabilities, and everything. And that's why in the 7-step prayer it says, I am now willing that you have all of me. It's the same thing with $100, right? Here's $100. Never mind. In step 7, I finally say, I'm now willing that you take this, good and bad, and do with it whatever you want. And that's what I do in 6 and 7. Again, 6 and 7 are another steps that's incredibly complicated for some people that their sponsors make it that way. Probably because they get like a book about this big in a treatment center. It's like, here's 6 and 7. Here's a booklet. Here you go. Answer these 47,000 questions and hope you don't drink.
Yep. Totally. Yeah.
And it's not. It's become willing, say a prayer. That's it. That simple. And God will do with those things as he wants, and they're going to come back. All of those character defects that you thought you prayed away, they're going to come back every single time. They're going to come back with a new mask on. They're going to come back looking a totally different way. They're going to come back the same, but like stronger. They're going to come back the same and weaker. That's the beauty of the program, is that like, I'm not trying to be a perfect Buddha human being. I'm just trying to be a man among men, a worker among workers. Like, I'm just trying to be a good guy, and when I can simplify it that much, life goes so much smoother. I spent a lot of time in this recovery wanting to be like the perfect, like float on a cloud alcoholic. That was like, and I've met a lot of people, you would be talking to them about a situation, that you're going through, maybe at work, like, yeah, my boss is kind of a dick, yada, yada. And most people you talk to are like, oh yeah, that sucks, your boss is a dick. But you be talking to people in the program, be like, well, did you do an inventory? Did you write about it? And that's none of your business. Be a human with me. Talk to me. I want to be relatable. And this goes back to step 12. I want to be relatable to the drunk that comes in here. And that just means being a human being. Showing them that, like, look, I can go a span of time without drinking comfortably. And to some people that are new, that's like mind-blowing, right? I don't even need to tell them like, oh, I have a nice house, a nice car, this and that, and I blah, blah. I go through this day without thinking about drinking one time, And they're like, holy shit, how do you do that? I want that trick. I don't care about the other stuff. I just want that trick today, And so I go through and I do that, and then I got to make amends. So then God says, yeah, I'm going to buy your business from you. We got a lot of liabilities here that we got to get out of the way. And you got to go clear up that wreckage, and you got to take care of that. And that's steps 8 and 9. And I made a lot of random amends in my life, and I've done, I went back to my neighbor who was a cop and like went to his house. My brother still thinks I'm crazy for doing this. And I knocked, and we had already moved out of the house, and I knocked on his door, and I told him like, hey, like, I know like you have kids here, and I was smoking weed in the house next door, and I'd throw shit out my window and go in your yard, and I was a piece of shit, and I'm sorry. Like, I apologize. I didn't use those same words, but I said that essentially, and that was a big amends for me. I tried to make as many amends as I can. And then once I'm there, I've done the program essentially. And now 10 and 11 is just me doing that process, rinse and repeat over and over again. And sometimes I go through periods where I don't want to do this shit. I don't care. God's an asshole. Blah, 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 blah. And so I don't. And then I have to go back and do a lot more work. But it's not perfect. It's progress. Spiritual progress. And then step 12, I got to carry this message to someone else, whether that means just talking to someone after a meeting and telling them everything's going to be okay. You don't have to drink today, even if you want to. Or it's actually sitting down with another person. Oh, look at that, 1 minute. Sitting down with another person and going through a inventory with them. All that is 12-step work. So I'll end it with this. I heard this at the spring roundup the first time I went in 2009. It's one of my favorite stories. This guy went up to the podium at like a meeting at 2 a.m. and told this. He said, this is what sums up Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, this guy is sitting on his couch. He's sitting on a chair in his living room. He's watching the game. He's drinking a beer. And his kid runs in and he says, Daddy, let's go out and play. Let's go play catch. Let's go play baseball. His dad says, No, give me a few minutes. I just got off work. I want to watch the game. Like, leave me alone. Kid runs away, comes back a few minutes later, asks again, Daddy, let's go play baseball. Let's go. He says, No, I've told you, I just got off work. I'm busy. And he said, Okay. Kid comes back a third time, asks him again. And Dad says, You know what? I'll tell you what. He reaches over, he grabs a Time magazine that's got a picture of the world on the front of it. He rips the cover off, tears it into a bunch of pieces, hands it to his son. He goes, You go put this puzzle together. When you come back, I'll be ready. Kid says, Okay. Kid runs away. He's back in like 2 minutes. He goes, Daddy, I put the puzzle back together. And he goes, How did you do that? There's no way you got that fast. He's like, well, I turned all the pieces around and there was a picture of a man on the back. And when I put the man together, the world just fell into place. Right? And that's what Alcoholics Anonymous does. Right? When I put myself together, everything else is just an easy trail. So I think that's it. That was a minute, right?
Yeah.
Maybe 90 seconds.